Story 1. I would run a comic book store. I would talk about comics all day, buy and sell cool stuff, and complain about how teenagers dress. Story 2. I do my job because I have to, not because I want to. If money were not a problem, I would be a professional cruise reviewer. Story 3. Airline pilot. To me, it would be great fun to push the buttons, move the levers, and flip the switches that make a 50,000-kilogram aircraft travel at 850 kilometers per hour at an altitude far above the highest mountains. There is only one problem. Training is incredibly expensive. Story 4. Aircraft mechanic. Airframe and powerplant mechanic on small private general aviation airplanes such as Cessna and Piper, not working for airlines. The problem is that I am sitting on top of a 30-year career as a software developer, and it is hard to let go of that kind of paycheck. I have always liked fixing tangible things to balance the rather abstract world of programming, but working on small airplanes is by far the most fun for me. So it is my retirement plan. Instead of doing nothing when I retire, I will fix airplanes. Right now, I am building up my time assisting my airframe and powerplant mechanic, who holds inspection authorization in fixing my airplane and other people's aircraft. I have about 1,500 hours of experience so far, and I may have the requisite 6,000 hours by the time I retire. Story 5. Dog rescue. Run an end-of-life shelter for older dogs and cats who are not adopted from regular shelters. It would require 1 to 2 acres of land beside a stream next to a forest, with a proper stone wall and a wrought iron gate. Story 6. Streamer. I'm just afraid it will be harder than most jobs. Story 7. Run a veterinary clinic with affordable prices so that everyone can have healthy pets. Story 8. Helping, supporting, and fostering the growth of young adults and children experiencing mental health challenges who have no parents, so they can heal and be free. Story 9. I would open a community center catering to veterans, get-togethers, career skills training, and transitions to the real-world workforce. Support groups and activities for post-traumatic stress disorder. Recreational activities such as building Lego sets, board games, Dungeons and Dragons, and pool tables. Ideally, I would also teach people to cook simple meals for one and expand the program to young adults as well. I decided this is how I would spend a lot of money when I bought tickets for the 1.8 billion Powerball, but I won $0, so it will remain a pipe dream. Story 10. I would really like to own a haberdashery shop. I do not think they make much money nowadays, so it would be more of a hobby than a job. I would like a back room with a large table surrounded by chairs where crafters could gather for a crafting and chatting session with tea and cake. Story 11. I would love to own a Texas-style barbecue restaurant. I like how some places in the southern states are only open on weekends and stay open until they run out of meat. Story 12. Hanging out with animals on a farm or at a doggy daycare. Story 13. I would probably still be a school librarian, but if it did not matter whether I was fired, I would not teach the standard curriculum in my area. I would focus almost exclusively on wild, high-interest lessons intended to inspire curiosity and interest-seeking behavior. I try my best, but holy shit, please do not make me teach students and adults about using artificial intelligence responsibly this year. I fucking hate it. Story 14. I focus on all kinds of arts and help people with their art the best I can. I already do this in many ways and feel great about it, but money is still a problem. Story 15. My dream hobby would be to travel the country and explore abandoned malls. Laughing out loud. This is what I wish I were doing with my time. I have a fascination with abandoned places, and malls are being torn down all over. I think the door is closing on it. Story 16. I traveled around the world with my 3 brothers, helping to feed the children who suffered the most. Story 17. Honestly, if money wasn't an issue, I'd love to be a traveling food photographer. Getting to see new places, try amazing food, and create content all day sounds like a dream. Story 18. I want to work with animals, especially elephants. There is a lot of conflict between humans and elephants, and I would like to research and help protect them. Story 19. I would help people with everything I know and can, even those deranged assholes whose opinions I disagree with. Story 20. Here are a few. Providing free meals. Volunteering as a ranger for tower watch duty. community gardening and education, painting murals, any type of international aid work. Story 21. I want the same job I have now, computer numerical control programmer and machinist, but for myself at home so I can be with my son as he grows up. Story 22. I am probably just building personal computers because that is my hobby. Story 23. I'd be a garbage collector. Think of all the cool things they get to keep. Old bicycles, mannequins, and broken electronics. I'd be very rich. Story 24. Playing and discussing horror-themed board games and video games online. Story 25. I have always wanted a small shop called Sweet Retreat that sells fine chocolates and penny candy. You can buy a book and read it in a cozy chair while enjoying a treat. Story 26. It is funny. Reading this thread, I see an ad for Walmart with the tagline, "The Western vibes you want." No, Walmart. I have unlimited money. I will not work there. Story 27. Running a camp for team building retreats and conducting seminars in the mountains. Story 28. I'd love to own an art gallery. I am passionate about creativity and would enjoy curating spaces that bring people together to experience and appreciate art and to support artists. Alternatively, I would consider working as a curator. Story 29. A farm animal sanctuary. Many animals are suffering and cannot escape their pain, but care is expensive. Sometimes I donate to sanctuaries to ease my conscience, but I would love to be on the front lines. Story 30. I don't dream of work. That's a weird take on the purpose of life. Story 31. I want to be a baker and own a bakery in a small town near the mountains. I will bake muffins and have regular customers who come in. I already know what they want. We will have an espresso machine that I can never figure out, but it makes a consistently good brew. Story 32. I would do the morning milking for a small dairy owned by someone else, then spend the rest of the workday making small repairs for people. Or I would be the fireman on a crack express steam locomotive, but I was born a century too late for that and I am too old and overweight now. Story 33. I would be the owner of a bookstore that includes an art supply section. I would specialize in older books, specifically first editions. I would make natural pigments and provide customized bookbinding. Story 34. I worked for a few months delivering food to elderly and disabled people and loved every second of it except the paycheck. It was the first and only job where I truly felt I made a difference. I usually hate having responsibilities, but this was different. I knew that if I messed up, they would miss lunch, possibly miss the only person who would talk to them that day, and in some cases might be in danger because I would not be there to call emergency services if they fell during the night. That actually happened once. An elderly man was on the cold floor for at least 2 hours before I arrived, and I am so glad he was one of the first on my delivery schedule. I do not want to work more than 40 hours a week, but if money were abundant, I would gladly take 20 to 25 hours weekly and have the rest of the time free for myself. Story 35. I would help owners find their lost pets. I try to do this now, but I do not have enough time and resources. Story 36. I started community work at the age of 12. By the age of 15, I watched a girl my age die from malnutrition. We collected funds for her food and medicine, but our efforts were too small, and people in my community were not wealthy. This had a profound impact on me, and I came to value human life above all else. If money were not a problem, I would spend my life supporting people, nurturing, educating, and empowering them. Story 37. An ice cream taste tester would also have to be immune to diabetes. Story 38. Owning a hobby farm, I would like to work with horses and veterans who have post-traumatic stress disorder. Story 39. I would do some charity work and whatever I want the rest of the time. Story 40. If money were no object, I would do my job for my friends and family for free. I already do. Being a tax accountant means giving free advice at bars anyway, so it would not be a huge change. Story 41. I have always wanted to be a zookeeper. It is a dirty job sometimes, but I find wild animals fascinating. Story 42. Concert photographer. In my daydreams, I am as cool as Ross Helfin. I absolutely am not. Story 43. I would do many different things. There are charity programs I would like to start. I would like to own a bookshop and art gallery, as well as a lavender farm and an alpaca farm. I would invest in my friend's dream restaurant. I would flip or restore houses. I would build a low-cost townhouse community for single parents who have full custody of their children, with affordable childcare available. Story 44. I am a concert pianist and piano teacher. If money were no issue, I would charge far less than the average rate for lessons. Story 45. Professional sleeper. I would be happy to work 8 hours a day and even do overtime. Story 46. I would not do it for the money. I would probably just travel and eat everything under the sun. Story 47. Buying old homes, renovating them, and renting them out at affordable prices. Story 48. This is not a job, but I want to be a travel vlogger and earn money from YouTube or other social media. Laughing out loud. Story 49. Librarian or bookshop owner. Chilling in a building full of books is fine with me. Story 50. It would be a better question if reality were not an issue. Money has nothing to do with my dream career. But since reality does exist, I am currently in graduate school pursuing what I always talked about. Amy. Story 51. I was an attractions hostess at a Disney park while I was in college. It was the most fun job I ever had. I felt like I was getting paid to play. Story 52. If money were not a problem, I would spend my days working toward ending world hunger or homelessness. Story 53. I am sitting on my increasingly large butt and playing video games. Story 54. My dream is to have no job. I can find other things that give me a sense of purpose. Working has never given me that. Story 55. I could live off my boyfriend's money, but I have too much pride to do that, so I keep working. Story 56. I want to be a truck driver and hope to get there in a couple of years. My dream is to own a large fleet and a successful business where I have the freedom to design show trucks as I wish and take them to shows. Story 57. I do not believe in dream jobs. My goals are private, and my job only finances them. Story 58. Probably a writer or a gamer if that were a job, not streaming but actually playing the game. Story 59. I build dashboards and perform creative, advanced data analysis for small companies, nonprofit organizations, and startups, and I offer strategy and advisory services. I already handle data work for large, established companies, but I need to move into engineering to stay ahead of artificial intelligence. The amount of work required to secure each contract is not worth the low pay and short durations of contracts with smaller organizations. Story 60. I would have several jobs. Actor, house builder, dog and cat sitter, translator, musician, bartender, and elder care specialist. No one specified what my hours would be each day or week, but I would want to do them. Story 61. I will be the odd one out here, but I prefer a blue-collar job, such as working at a marina, because I can set my own hours and come in at my own convenience. Story 62. Reviewing food at restaurants and hotels around the world. Story 63. If money were no object, work would not be a priority. I would travel constantly. Story 64. I'd be a real artist and wouldn't feel like I'm selling my soul if I ever earned money. Story 65. I am an international travel blogger and occasional gamer. Story 66. Making art, good art, bad art, all kinds. I would try every medium possible until I found the one that most deeply resonated with my soul. I love to sing, write, create, and express. Perhaps it is also about taking the time to fine-tune the talents we already have. You have the capacity to be more creative when you have the luxury of time. We are all artists in our own right. Some just need the right exposure, materials, resources, and encouragement to become inspired to start. Story 67. Cleaning up roadsides, parks, and natural areas. There is too much litter. Story 68. I would run a rescue shelter for dogs and cats. I would take in any homeless dog or cat I saw and give each one a home. I think this would fulfill my soul like nothing else could. Story 69. If I were a porn star, then I would get the penis enhancement that I need. Story 70. Any job concerned with art but devoted to entertainment, for example, a cartoonist, a screenwriter, or a musician, rather than a painter or a chorister. Story 71. I would choose something fun and creative. Traveling the world, writing about it, or trying random jobs for the experience. Story 72. I would mod the game Dawn of War 2, Retribution. Story 73. Most people work not because they love it, but because they have bills to pay and families to take care of. If money weren't a problem, they would travel the world and enjoy life. Every day would be time for themselves, not spent working for others. Story 74. My dream job would be writing full-time. Fiction, poems, and stories for children. Alas, Story 75. It is not as easy as just doing the job. Being a pro bono lawyer for the underdog would be fulfilling. A class action lawsuit over unpaid salaries would be appealing. Story 76. Whitewater Rafting Guide. I would love to spend my time on the water, introduce people to it, and not be homeless. Instead, it is spreadsheets, Outlook, and a 401k retirement plan. Story 77. Depending on the scale of money not being a problem, I would return to working excessively on complex problems as I build millions of affordable housing units and try to change the dynamics of United States and global politics, especially around labor, guns, and healthcare. Story 78. Working in an arboretum, walking around and checking that the trees are okay. I appreciate I'm far from qualified, but I think it sounds amazing. Story 79. If you have 100% pleasure in doing a certain task, one that fulfills you in every possible way, then it is never a job. It is the enjoyment of life. I would be a professional piddler. Story 80. I enjoyed my fast food job at Tim Hortons. If you could guarantee that I will not have to wash dishes or work the sandwich cart, I would be happy. Story 81. Spreadsheet creator, coffee taster, maybe a home baker. Story 82. It might be kind of fun to be a really relaxed librarian. I don't know. If I didn't need the money, I would probably only do it occasionally. Story 83. I would learn game development and build games that I would love to play, but the real dream would be creating the soundtrack. Story 84. No job is a dream job, but to keep myself busy, if I ever win a large amount of money, I will spend my days volunteering at the local food bank. Story 85. My girlfriend and I talk about what we would do if we won the lottery. We would probably move closer to my parents and either open a bookstore or buy one and work from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. If money were not a problem, we would not have to worry about being successful. It would be nice to have a slow-paced job near my parents in a smaller town. Story 86. I am a vintage watch dealer. I do it now as a side hustle, but I would love to do it full-time. Story 87. Professional traveler. Just me, snacks, and stamps in my passport. Story 88. If I didn't have to worry about revenue and could find trustworthy people to run it, I would open a bar or venue as a cool hangout and provide a space for local artists to perform. Story 89. Somewhere I could actually leave my mark on the world. My future grandchildren could say he did that. It was him. Story 90. A marine biologist who specializes in great white sharks and focuses on finding ways to prevent attacks on people. Story 91. Look, the plebeian fell in love with the labor system that exploits him. No, dreaming of work is wrong. Story 92. Then I would probably focus on scaling my own brand and creative projects, with full freedom to experiment and build without limits. Story 93. It was the same one I had when I was 22. I was working in a small independent video store. Story 94. My dream job would be to work as a developer. I would love to build new communities and walkable neighborhoods. Story 95. My dreams do not involve working, but if I had to choose, I would be a luxury travel writer. Story 96. I think I'd buy a property that would double as a venue for boutique weddings and manage it. Story 97. Full-time student. I get to go and learn every day. Sign me up. At my age, researching and writing a paper about something unusual sounds much more entertaining than my job. Story 98. I would not work. I would have a farm with animals and vegetables to tend, maybe a few dogs. That would be nice. Story 99. I was a movie theater projectionist for a couple of years, but the pay was poor. Story 100. I run a nonprofit organization where I assist veterans in finding meaningful employment. Story 101. I own a diner in a small town with the perfect vibe. Story 102. Air guitarist. I would not even try that hard because I would not need to. Story 103. Bartender and bar owner at a bar on the water somewhere with a decent music venue. More than the money, the hours suck. Story 104. If I recall from TikTok, I do not have a dream job or dream of working. Besides that, I am happily retired. Story 105. I would be a cardiothoracic surgeon if I had the intelligence for it. Story 106. I am a board game store owner. I would play board games, introduce people to new ones, and create a vital third place. Story 107. Dream job? I would not need one. I would use my time to find a purpose, hopefully by helping others who are less fortunate. Story 108. I'd work in movies, not as an actor but perhaps in screenwriting or directing. I would love to tell stories through cinema. Story 109. Jewelry designer and maker. It is really tragic that my pathetically modest income cannot show the world what awesome taste I really have. Story 110. I might open a small cafe that hosts silent book clubs, crafts, and other fun events. If money is no object, I can give it time to grow. Story 111. Food reviewer who travels domestically and internationally to review a variety of foods from many places. Story 112. Honestly, I enjoy what I do now, so I would do it part-time and not in a managerial or administrative role. Story 113. Ski instructor. It is fun and outdoors. You are doing something you are skilled at. The kids, adults, and wealthy divorcees are all fun. It is just the best job ever. Story 114. A nonprofit organization that helps underprivileged children. Story 115. Actor on Broadway and off-Broadway in New York City. For now, I am teaching first grade and acting in community theater in Wilmington. Story 116. I am a bookstore owner with a small cafe, living out my You've Got Mail fantasies. Story 117. I want to be a park ranger. Unfortunately, as I am from Wales, there are very few jobs related to being a park ranger. But it is definitely my dream job. Story 118. As a venomous snake handler, I am not able to do that in the state where I live. I would have to move to another state. Story 119. Working with older adults and having meaningful conversations with them every day. Story 120. Honestly, my ideal job would involve typing. Maybe customer service that is not on the phone so others cannot hear my frustration. Laughing out loud. Or a web or sign designer. I would be content as long as the supervisor is cool. I am very picky. Story 121. I'm surprised how many of these are totally doable. You can do it. Don't wait. Quit your job and give it a shot. If you fail, so what? At least you will have tried. Story 122. I don't know. I genuinely like my job, but I would probably continue doing it or make jewelry full-time, since that is my hobby at the moment. Story 123. I would love to own or run a microbrewery. Most of them are not profitable, and it seems craft breweries are declining and closing faster than new ones are opening. Story 124. I fix broken electronics. I like taking things apart, but I often spend more on repairs than I recoup. I tend to break things. Story 125. I would still be doing what I do now. I like working, and I work at the cancer center that treated me. I could volunteer, but I would be limited to once a week instead of 5 days a week. Story 126. Just help everyone I can. I do a little job here and there, like we used to a long time ago, trade a cow for sheep or split a cow with neighbors to get something else. Story 127. I want to be an artist. I love crafting, and I don't get to do it nearly as much as I would like. I love painting, sculpture, sewing, and beadwork. If I could be successful at anything, it would be sharing my art. Story 128. I would start my own business or private practice, become certified, and teach only children with dyslexia and other literacy-related learning disabilities. This is currently only a small fraction of my job, and I find it absolutely fascinating. I would love to help children who truly need it. Story 129. I am a stay-at-home dad. I would love to spend all my time with my child while I can. Story 130. I do not have a job. I do not like working, and I avoid it whenever I can. Story 131. If I won the lottery and never had to work again, I would look for part-time work in a small automotive machine shop that specializes in custom builds, preferably on classic cars. Story 132. I want a job creating and writing funny content that makes people laugh. I prefer a role without intense, high-pressure deadlines. Story 133. I asked my brother what he'd do to stay occupied if he won the lottery, and he said he'd keep being a firefighter. Story 134. The main reason for getting a job is money. If money were out of the equation, there would be no reason to work. At that point, we would rather spend time on hobbies and personal goals. Story 135. Race car driver, easily. My long-term life goal is to finance my own seat in a Grand Touring 4 car. Story 136. Sleep. I'm so tired. I have been working long days with minimal time off for 25 years now. Longer than most and shorter than some. I want to rest. Please. Story 137. If money isn't an issue, why the goddamn would I work? Story 138. These questions always make me feel like a boastful jerk. The dream job is no job unless you are in the extreme minority who actually wake up feeling joyful every day about jumping into your career. I retired right before I turned 40, and it has been absolutely glorious. Those who say you will get bored have no imagination. I have been enjoying this midlife retirement for 4 years now and am loving every minute of it. My life is a bit ridiculous, and being on Reddit makes me feel guilty about it. First world problems, I suppose. Story 139. I would be a philanthropist. It is what I have wanted to be since I was a little kid. Story 140. Delivering mail by boat on a sleek Boston whaler to islanders in a warm location. Story 141. I worked at a video store with my best friend. It was like getting paid to hang out. Story 142. If I had to have a job, it would be a horse trainer or one of those people who review guns for a living. Sadly, I do not think either of those is in the cards for me. Story 143. Video game critic who plays games all day and writes reviews. Story 144. I am not a good painter, but I truly love the rituals of painting. Story 145. I would still be doing what I am doing. I would not feel so pressured and overwhelmed, and I would do better overall because my nervous system would not be in fight or flight over money all the time. Story 146. I spend the whole day fishing for trout, driving through the mountains and hills and casting into creeks. Story 147. I am a photographer. I love taking photos, but I do not make much money and the upfront costs are high, such as camera bodies and lenses. Story 148. I love making sourdough bread and wine. Oddly, both hobbies involve controlling yeast to ferment the raw ingredients. There is not enough money from either of those small-time crafts to compete with the salary I earn from my day job, but if money were no longer a necessity, I would run a small craft bakery and winery making sourdough bread and unique wines for local customers. Story 149. I would be a symphony orchestra conductor and lead Mahler's 2nd and 8th symphonies. Story 150. Social media influencer where I would not actually have to influence anyone. Story 151. Social media influencer where I wouldn't actually have to influence anyone. Story 152. I would be a bad employee at a Mexican restaurant and eat free queso all day. Story 153. I don't know. Maybe cooking. These days, all I want is the beach, a board, and a burger. Story 154. Starting a company that builds brand new first-generation Toyota Tacomas. The best trucks ever made. Story 155. Self-employed, also known as living somewhere on the Greek coast. Story 156. Everyone has to work. I am lucky enough to say I have attained the dream job in my field. I make an astounding amount of money per hour, I work nights, and I only work 15 days a month. The benefits would knock your socks off, and retirement builds incredibly quickly. Story 157. Recycle junk into more useful, interesting items. A mix of repair and crafting using found materials. I could do this easily without a paid job, but I like having pets that are comfortable. Story 158. Maybe a hydraulic engineer building dams, an architect designing houses, a cabinet maker, a haberdasher, or a fantasy game developer. That would be really cool if I did not have to worry about money or deadlines. I wish I could live to the age of 200 so I could do all these things and more. Instead, I spend my days as a wage worker. I have to pay the bills somehow. Story 159. I would probably pour drinks at a distillery, brewery, or winery and talk to people all day. Maybe I would even get a riding mower and go around town mowing yards. Story 160. Full-time world traveler with a camera chasing sunsets. Story 161. Volunteer. Help out at the children's hospital, animal shelters, benefit concerts, steak nights, and diabetes walks. It sounds like a great way to support the community and build new relationships. Story 162. This may sound odd, but I want a generic office or retail job. If money were no object, I would also request a standard schedule. I thrive on having a place I have to be. I want clear instructions and not to have to make many decisions. I want to see and talk to people. I do not want the option to take work home. Story 163. I would own a brick and mortar bookstore filled with beautiful books and art, with a stellar sound system and good acoustics. Story 164. Woodworker or National Park Ranger, depending on marital status. Story 165. I would have a recreation center with after-school programs for children where I can help them with homework and be a father figure to those who lack one. There would be an adult basketball league I could play in a couple of times a week. The best part is that while I am working, my children could be at the center, so I would not have to choose between work and being with my family. Story 166. I want to own a bar and music venue to host local and touring rock and metal bands. If money were not an issue, I would keep the venue open and well-stocked, pay staff fairly, employ a house sound engineer, establish a base pay rate for musicians, return most ticket revenue to the bands, and foster a community where musicians can meet, hang out, and discover local acts. If I pay employees well, I could step away from the bar, trust someone else to run the night, and occasionally play on stage as an opening act. At the end of the day, I would see live performances most nights of the week and bartend a little. Story 167. I am going to teach jiu-jitsu. I am already working toward it. I receive enough compensation from the Department of Veterans Affairs to manage without a job. So any additional income is a bonus. I have nice things and do not want for much. I just want to share my passion for martial arts and teach others. Story 168. You should modify the question to, what job would you choose if you were guaranteed to be hired and it paid enough to live on? Because now you have a bunch of commenters saying, I don't dream of labor. We get it, you have no hobbies or skills. Story 169. I don't want a job, but I'd focus heavily on college programs related to electricity and engineering. Story 170. Helping people by building public works projects such as parks and bridges. Story 171. All I ever wanted was to have my own bakery and serve people warm goodies to brighten their day. Postscript. I still want it. I will have it someday. Story 172. A coach or mentor, or a highly specialized craftsman in a cottage on a hill overlooking the ocean making katanas. Story 173. I sell guitars and cars. I love both, and if money isn't an issue, I don't have to worry about harming anyone financially and can help them find the right instrument or vehicle. Story 174. I am a stay-at-home mom, currently unmarried and with no children, so I guess I have some work to do. Story 175. I am a writer and a streamer. I enjoy creative writing, and when I stream I am simply hanging out. Story 176. My dream is to be a bum and not have to work. Story 177. Probably a scientist who studies mutations and new technology. Imagine having an electric cat. Story 178. If money were not a problem, my dream job would be no job. If I had to work, I would help others do something creative or work outdoors in nice weather at events where people are happy, such as weddings and similar occasions. Story 179. I'd like to make modern reproductions of antique firearms. The engineering in the early 1900s was fascinating. Designers were trying many ideas to see what stuck. Story 180. I would walk into a local microbrewery and ask to be taught how to make really good beer. Or I would shadow a soundboard operator at a concert venue, bar, or any place with live music. Story 181. Crime investigations, private investigators, or something similar. I am morbidly curious and very nosy. Story 182. I'm very lucky to be living my dream job making wine. Honestly, you pour so much money into it. It's ridiculous. I love what I do and can't imagine life without it. Story 183. Open and manage as many free animal shelters as I could handle. Story 184. I am an itinerant artist. I would love to travel and draw. I might visit libraries and archives to look for interesting things. Story 185. An animal shelter, an eco-friendly farm, and a small resort. A place to meet new people, care for animals, and be self-sustaining. Story 186. I'd like to build motorcycles. I occasionally do, but the worst part is the money. Story 187. Ornithologist, because I need the money to complete my degree first. Story 188. I hate the idea of working. If I could afford not to, I would not work. Story 189. Professional freelance travel writer who gets to choose the destinations I write about. Story 190. A tiny fairy princess who rules no one, simply a giver of love. Story 191. Realistic, car detailer. Unrealistic, race car driver or virtual assistant. Story 192. I would volunteer at an animal shelter if I did not have to worry about money. Story 193. I should probably start a podcast, but I'm not very creative when it comes to thinking of topics to discuss. Story 194. My job is to enjoy the rest of my life by doing whatever I want, whenever I want. The phrase dream job is an oxymoron. Story 195. I'd be a taxi driver, just chilling, driving around all day, chatting with people about their lives, playing some good music in between, and seeing all the sights from a distance. Story 196. Animal shelter. I walk dogs and clean animal enclosures for a couple of hours each day. Story 197. I am a doctor. If I were infinitely rich, I'd go into film and theater as a director, cinematographer, editor, gaffer, or actor. I love all of it. My dream is to make, write, edit, or serve as director of photography for a movie, or to write and stage a play. Maybe someday. Story 198. I worked as a museum tour guide for a couple of years. It was a fun job. Story 199. Honestly, I wish for a simple job that pays more than enough to cover the bills and gives me the freedom to pursue more than one or two hobbies. Story 200. When I was a kid in the 1970s, my dream job was to be a tram driver at Disneyland. Back then, they had a big, sprawling parking lot leading up to the entrance gates, and I remember how excited I was as my family approached the park. Now they just bring you from a parking structure across the street. My Disney dreams have not fizzled out. If money were no concern, I would love to be the English language public address announcer at Tokyo Disney Resort. I know that sounds strange. Story 201. Honestly, I like my current job. The work is complex enough to be engaging but easy enough that I do not get stressed about it. Management is reasonable and the team is great. It is an office job, so I can work from home sometimes, and I never have to do hard labor or be outside. I already work part-time, so that is a win. If I did not have to worry about money, I would probably work only 2 days instead. Story 202. I want to help people, but not have it be too emotionally draining. I know it would take a toll on me. Story 203. Probably the same job I have now, but for 16 to 20 hours a week. I like what I do, but I would like to spend more time on my hobbies. Story 204. To stop stupid questions on Reddit, I would take that job. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.